Hello, my name is Ethan Smith, and I'm excited to be with you today discussing this week's topic uh, concerning research interest and exploring some of the varied research that's already been conducted in the field. My favorite area of study is the antebellum period in the South, particularly the effects of slavery on the antebellum economy. Therefore, the two authors I chose to study this week concern themselves with both the pre and post war economic effects of slavery on the antebellum South. Throughout the years, economists have debated the impacts of slavery on the economy, and the historiography of the institution's impacts continues to be shaped today. The following two highlighted dissertations give an example of the varied thoughts concerning slavery's impacts on the economy of the South prior to and following the Civil War. The first of the two studies that I looked at this week is entitled Deadweight Loss in the American Civil War, The Political Economy of Slavery, Succession, and Emancipation. And that's written by now Dr. Jeffrey Rogers Hummel. Um, in the study, he works to decide whether slavery was profitable or unprofitable, and whether the slavery was efficient or inefficient for the South. In his thesis, he says the Southern slavery was both an unprofitable and inefficient form of labor. In the terminology of economics, it was a system that imposed significant deadweight loss on the Southern economy, despite being lucrative to slaveholders. He says one way the federal government helped out was through the federal fugitive slave law, and it proved to be one of the most crucial ways that the national government socialized the system's enforcement. Throughout the study, throughout the first half of the study, he focuses on the abolitionist cause, and he talks about Adam Smith's view of slavery in regards to it being an inefficient and unprofitable. He says the abolitionists expected the end of the Civil War to be an economic boom that would defeat the South due to the emancipation of the slaves and the rise in their productivity. He also goes on to highlight varied historians' views of the economy of the South um, following the Civil War. And one of those historians he highlights is that of U.B. Phillips. And he uses U.B. Phillips as an example, saying that the assertion that slavery had become unprofitable. In U.B. Phillips's work, he describes how the system of slavery was most repressive and unprofitable for the South. Um, Another historian he highlights in his work is Eugene Genovese. He highlights the political economy of slavery and reiterates that slavery was unprofitable due to the low productivity of its labor force. Throughout the study, he uses various pieces of statistical data to support his work, and much time is spent supporting his assertion that the deadweight loss theory in slavery cost the South more than that of a free labor system. Hummel says that by the time the end of the Civil War had come, the productivity of bound labor had plummeted, and by the end, the Confederacy itself considered freeing its slaves due to the high cost of the institution of slavery. The second study, in contrast to that of Hummel's work, that I looked at this week was The Economic Impact of the American Civil War, an empirical examination by William M. Russell III. Um, in his study, Dr. Russell gives an overarching exploration of the economic impact of the Civil War on both the North and the South. Russell discusses how both the war and the ending of slavery impacted the Southern economy. And he describes the war as having four main effects on the Southern economy. One, it slowed the population growth. Two, it caused inflation. Three, the substitution of capital for labor in industry. And four, increased the post war government involvement in the economy. In the study, he goes on to explore quantitatively how the destruction of the physical capital that occurred during the Civil War was responsible for post war Southern poverty. In contrast, To Hummel's The Deadweight Loss in the American Civil War. Russell says that the research shows that the antebellum South, counter to its traditional portrayal, actually had a dynamic and growing economy that was closing the income gap with the North. However, after the toils and hardships throughout the course of the war proved an economic disaster for the South. Hummel represents this economic disaster through an empirical study by examining the impact of the war's destruction and the end of slavery on real per capita income between 1860 and 1870 in the South. In conclusion, while in contrast with one another, both dissertations are interesting studies in their own respects concerning slavery's economic impact on the Southern economy in the 19th century and how historians differ in their views concerning the economic impact of the institution throughout the 19th century. Thank you for your time viewing this presentation, and I look forward to sharing and viewing your presentations as we move through this semester.